Now, the Anglican Archbishop of Cape Town, Thabo Makgoba, is calling on South African faith groups and civil society lobby to lobby the South African government to step in and avert what he calls a humanitarian catastrophe in the Tigray region in Ethiopia. The Archbishop joins us now to talk more about this. Archbishop, good evening, and thank you very much for your time.
And good evening to your viewers.
Now, it's described really as a catastrophe. I mean, even the international community saying those who are affected by the deadly fighting in Ethiopia's region are really under a severe situation. Even those who are bringing help are being overwhelmed at this point in time. What do you make of the attitude and the stance of the South African government towards this crisis?
Thabo, the situation there tears my heart, indeed. And we have been there as South Africans, and we know our relationships with the people of Tigray during a very difficult time in the history of this country. And I'm urging, I'm not doing a blame game, but I'm urging the South African government to really put moral pressure to bear on the African Union and all parties in Ethiopia to have an indaba, to sit around the table and find an African solution to this political crisis and a humanitarian crisis. I know there was a team that went, but I don't think just going and keeping quiet is good enough.
Yeah. Now, with over 21 million people already in need of humanitarian assistance there, and this number now rising due to this crisis, one would ask what kind of help would you want the South African government to forward? I mean, what kind of pressure, what kind of intervention can they really be able to give at this time with our limitations, with the COVID pandemic also putting more limitations on movement?
I think we've never underestimated the moral high ground that we've occupied in South Africa. We can bring moral pressure to bear. We can ask the Minister of Internal Relations. We've just presided over the African Union. We can ride on that goodwill and say, can journalists be allowed to go and record and tell the story? Can independent human rights experts also be allowed in? But as a priest, can God's people be fed? Because the teams of Tigrayans that came to tell their story here at Bishop's Court tells me that it is appalling. They need food. They need the world to know. And they need the parties involved to come around the table and talk. And I'm sure our government, even with the burden of coronavirus, has a moral mandate to ensure that no catastrophe happens under our watch. And we don't want to say we didn't know, like the situation in Rwanda.
Yeah. You're calling for foreign troops that they should leave Ethiopian soil. Are you saying they are adding to the already existing tension between the political factions?
I think they are. And what needs to happen is, I mean, I don't want to be pointing names, but if you look at the tension on the Sudan side, the tension, the Eritreans, and that can actually create havoc. So what needs to happen is the Ethiopians must be given opportunity to sit by themselves under the watch of the United Nations or under the watch of the African Union, and they can find a solution. We don't want a military solution. This is a humanitarian issue. People need to be fed. People need to be listened to, and democratic processes need to be implemented.
What are I mean, it's, of course, Tigray does not exist in a vacuum. I mean, it exists within Ethiopia, and there are chances that this could really spread and quickly to the rest of the country. So what is your assessment of the things that could be done in the country itself to prevent this conflict from spreading?
I think the respect for an agreement that the federal state has in terms of how that federal state will happen. It's one of the things. Like if the Tigrayans are raising a particular concern because the federal state is not respecting some of the undertakings, I'm sure representatives of the federal state could come alongside this region and say, this is a constitutional, democratic way of why we are doing what we are doing, rather than the military drones and military might. Yeah. As just one example. And I call it an indaba, coming alongside and not fighting each other as Africans, but saying, what is an Ethiopian solution by the Ethiopians, and not hiding what they are doing, but allowing others to see and to guide where necessary.
What is the threat then, Archbishop, in your view, to the rest of the Horn of Africa? I mean, this particular conflict that is going on there, because, you know, whenever you talk of the intervention of the other African countries, one would say, well, they're looking at it and saying it's never going to get to us, or it's never really going to affect us. So what is the real threat to the rest of the Horn of Africa?
The real threat is, we know the pain of the Sudanese, and it's not so long. And we know how many people were displaced and how many people were hungry, how many girl children were raped. We know that. We've been there. And we know the conflict in Eritrea, and we know how people have suffered. And we know how even in Ethiopia itself, people are displaced. And so this is an African problem. This is our problem. We know how many people will leave and come to South Africa, go to Zimbabwe, go to other African countries. And sometimes, unfortunately, those countries are not hospitable to those that are migrant and refugees. And now it creates a chain reaction within the continent. Yeah. So it is our problem. It is not only an Ethiopian Tigrayan problem.
Who has substantial leverage over President Abiy's government? I mean, we know that the African Union rarely has any influence on this kind of situation. In fact, it becomes very difficult for them, particularly also considering the antagonistic relationship that the AU has, also being housed in Ethiopia. But let's also talk about the EU, for example. They've suspended their 90 million euro support. The UN has done little, really, but just wag a finger of disapproval. Who really has, who's left, who has some kind of leverage with the Ethiopian government?
I think I still have complete confidence in the African Union that it's a wonderful cop-out to say we don't have a leverage. I think we can get the likes of the old statesmen of the Mutlantes of this world, the former president of Mozambique, get old states person within Africa. And if maybe a geopolitical bloc is not going to help and it will exacerbate things, just get people of integrity, people that are respected and that may not be perceived as tampering with the sovereignty of Ethiopia. But who will say, for goodness sake, we can't allow Africans to maim, to kill, to rape, and to use hunger as a force for solving problems. I'm sure in the rest of Africa we can. I mean, I'm just thinking off the top of my head, the Thabo Mbeki Foundation may look at who in the continent, who in South Africa may reach out. Maybe the group of elders who are the peace laureates may want to explore if they can come alongside one of their own as a peace laureate.
Yeah. What about the other interventions? I mean, sure, some of them do sound a little bit severe, especially if we're talking already about 21 million people who need aid at this point. But others are suggesting to join the EU, for example, in the suspension of assistance until the UN and other aid agencies are allowed free access into Tigray. Others are saying, if necessary, the US should freeze their preferential trade benefits of AGOA to Ethiopia until an opportunity is created for aid to go in there and observers and all kind of assistance is allowed to go in there. Would you support that?
I'm a priest, I'm a pastor, and I know you don't fix wrong with wrong. I know the pain of the Tigrayans that are hungry, and I'm still hell-bent that as the international community, yes, targeted sanctions may be important to move the situation forward, but I think we need to find a solution that will bring the Tigrayan region and the federal government around the table before we go for huge punitive measures that will make those that are hungry more hungry and to die.
Yeah. This, of course, is a call for the South African Civil Rights Society. Previously, I mean, you call on them, they do respond and they come together. What do you want them to do at this particular point? Is there a campaign that you are launching? Is there a meeting? Is there dialogue? What is going to happen?
I'm not launching anything. I'm at the Synod of Bishops at the moment, and our Synod of Bishops covers Namibia, Angola, Lesotho, Mozambique, Swaziland, and St. Helena. And we are acutely aware of the challenges in Cabo Delgado, and we are seeing now a pattern which was almost long gone in South Africa. And so we're saying we're committing ourselves as the public theological pastoral witness of the Anglican Church, but we are also calling people, other faith groups, because we know there are Orthodox Christians and the Coptic Christians in Ethiopia, and then we belong to the Council of African Anglican provinces in the continent. So we're calling those to say, if there is any process that they can do, can we do it together? I've written to our office in Kenya, which looks after the Anglican Church in the continent, and I will be also approaching some of our colleagues to listen to the Tigrayans that are in South Africa, hear their story, and hopefully that will ignite a call to African Union, our government, and like we are calling for vaccines, they will also realize that Africa does not need wars, worst wars within a particular federal state.
Archbishop, we appreciate your time and thank you for raising this particular matter, and we continue to urge you and the Senate of Bishops there to continue to pray for the situation there in Tigray. But we appreciate your time and thank you for joining us tonight.